What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the next part in the Build a Spotify App series. In this part, we're going to build out the playlist view controller where we see everything that a playlist contains. So that said, make sure you start by destroying the like button. Let's open up our XC workspace here and let's dive back into our project. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's open up the simulator. Let's make sure that everything is still looking good. And if you recall, we actually set up the API calls already and the controller. So if I go ahead and tap on one of these, it opens up that respective playlist controller and passes it in. So we're going to work on rendering it out here. And I also want to do one more thing in this video. I want to add section titles to each of these because we can't really tell what this is. Like the top one is new releases. I think this is featured playlists, and this is recommended tracks. So we're going to add that as well. So let me go ahead and jump into our playlist view controller. So that'll be in controllers, we have other, and we have playlist view controller. And in here, all we're doing right now in view to load is just fetching the data, which is great. That's what we do need to do. But we don't have any rendering code. So let's go ahead and figure out how we're going to render this. So all we really want in a given playlist is maybe the playlist image up here with some information about it, and then just a list of songs that are in that playlist. So we're going to use a collection view to do that. You can, of course, use a table view as well. But the reason that I'm going to use a collection view is because back here in this collection view, we already have a cell that we can reuse. We can reuse this guy right here that we're using for tracks. So let's go ahead and set up a pretty basic collection view. So I'm going to say private let's collection view will be a UI. Let's just go ahead and assign it like this, UI collection view. That's not what we want. I feel like autocomplete just never works anymore. So let's see, the frame is 0. And once again, we're going to be using we could use a compositional layout, or we could use a standard layout. So let's think about this. So we could probably just get away with let's use the same compositional layout. So let's say UI collection view compositional layout. So you want to go ahead and stick with this first one here. Let me also go ahead and line break all of this before it gets super messy. And let's go ahead and open the constructor on this guy. And we're going to use the one that gives us a section provider. And let's see, so section provider is going to give us the index here, and it's going to give us an environment we don't care about. And actually, we don't even care about the index because we're only going to have one section, but we need to create and return this NS collection layout section. So let's go ahead and do that right in here. Now, what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to cheat and go back to our home view controller. And let's find that code where we're creating that section for the third one. And let's see, that is case 2, which is right here. So I'm going to copy all of this jazz. We are going to jump back into our playlist view controller. And let's go ahead and paste that all in. Let's just go through the code. So we have a fractional width of 1 and a fractional height of 1 for the item. We're adding some content insets. We have a single vertical group here, and then we're creating the section and just returning it. So that should be all good to go. The next thing that we want to go ahead and do is add this as a sub view. So I'm going to say view, add sub view, the collection view. We want to go ahead and set the delegate for this guy as well as the data source. And let's see, we are also going to give it a nice background color to match the system background color. And I'm also going to register a cell to it, of course. So we're going to say collection view. We want to go ahead and register a cell class. This is going to be a recommended cell. Let's see, recommended track collection view cell. We might want to rename this cell since we're not really just using it for recommendations anymore. We're reusing it in multiple places, so we might do that later on. But the cell identifier will be the class name .identifier. Looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and resolve these 2 errors that we see down here by conforming to the protocol for the collection view. I'm going to do that down here in an extension just to keep our code nice and clean. So we're going to say extension on this controller, and we want to conform to both the UI collection view delegate as well as the UI collection view data source. Now for this, we're going to want some information. So we're going to say number of sections is going to be 1. We're going to say number of rows is, or rather number of items. Number of items, let's say 30 just to see what this looks like. And let's see, cell for item at index path. We're just going to go ahead and dequeue one of these cells. So we can say collection view. We're going to dequeue a reusable cell with an identifier for the given index path. This will be our cell. What is it? Recommended cell. Let's see if autocomplete likes to be my friend today. Recommended. Man, I really can't type. Recommended. Here we go. Recommended track collection view cell is what I'm looking for. Dot identifier for the given index path. We also want to go ahead and cast this cell so we can actually use its configure method. So we're going to say as our given cell. And if we're not able to cast it, we'll just go ahead and return a vanilla collection view cell. And of course, go ahead and make this a guard. And now what we can go ahead and do is return cell. We would also be saying something like cell configure with a view model, which we're going to create in a moment, but let's just go ahead and copy, rather comment that out. I'm just going to go ahead and say cell.background color is red. And let's see, what else did we forget to do? We probably want to give this collection view a frame, slightly important. So we're going to override view.layout subviews, call super, and go ahead and give this guy a frame to match the bounds of the view. And we also eventually want to be able to tap on one of these items and go ahead and have that song play. So we're going to implement this function for did select item at index path. We're going to deselect it at the index path, and here we would play the song. Let's go ahead and give this a run, and we should see our red cells at this point. Of course, we need to configure our actual view models. Looks like we have an error. Let's see. Looks like it's yelling at us here. Collection view, deselect item at index path, animated true, because I spelled true wrong. Let's go ahead and give that a run once more. My Xcode has been extra slow today, so let's see how this goes. So it looks like it's successfully compiled, and there is our app launching. Bear with it. And we're going to tap into a playlist, and we should see those rows, which in fact we do. And we just see them with the generic photo thing here. And the background color is not red because we're not actually, we're setting it, and then the cell itself internally is overriding it for the content view. So let's go ahead and convert the songs we get back to the respective view model so we can use it. So first we need to create this view models array on our controller. So I'm going to do that. Let's do that right here below the initializer. You're going to say private var view models, and this is going to be the recommended view model, like that. Go ahead and construct it. And once we get our actual data back here, what we want to go ahead and do is create a bunch of these view models, but we're going to do that on the main thread. So we're going to say dispatch queue main async, since we're going to be updating the table view. And we also want to go ahead and say weak self here, so we don't run into memory leak issues. If an error occurs, for now, I'm going to cheat and just print out what error occurred. Otherwise, what we're going to go ahead and do is we want to reload the collection view. But before we do that, we want to go ahead and assign the view models. And the view models is going to basically be from the model that we get, we want to, from it, steal the tracks. And tracks should have items in it. And we are going to compact map these into our view model. So we're going to put the view model name here, open up the constructor, and let's fill all this stuff out. So we have a name, an artist name, an artwork URL. So the name should be $0 perhaps. Let's see. We have a track, which should have a name. Let's see, we have $0. What else do we need? Do we have a artist on here? We do not. We have a track once again. And from this, we should be able to get the artist.first.name. And this doesn't take optional, so we're going to coalesce it to a dash. And then finally, we need a URL here. So I'm going to say URL with a string. Now this is going to be optional as well, so we're going to coalesce to an empty string. We are going to say $0 dot track dot, what is it, images. That's not what we want. Are there not images on here? Could have sworn I saw images on here. Let's see, the album probably has images. Album, there we go, dot images, dot first, dot URL, just like that. And that'll go ahead and set up that view model for each of the tracks in this playlist. Let's go ahead and line break that. And I think we should be in business. We just need to go ahead and update number of the items is going to be view models.count. And eventually, once we tap on one of these, we want to actually get the given item out, but I'll leave that for another video. Go ahead and hit Command R to build and run. We're all going to cross our fingers that I didn't make a typo. And what the heck is going on? I never uncommented this. So uncomments your configure function, which takes in a view models index path.row. Let's see why this isn't code highlighting or syntax highlighting. Let's see, I probably have a typo. That's probably what's going on. I forgot to get rid of this slash. Go ahead and give it a run. And now we should see our cells being configured with the appropriate data. All right, boom, there is our playlist. Now we do want one more thing. So we want a header up here that not only shows the album cover for this playlist, but it should also show like a play button where we can play the whole playlist, right? Like you don't want to be tapping each of these songs independently because that's kind of a pain. And I personally also think the height of this cell is a little too big. So let's go ahead and let's polish all this up. So first and foremost, for the height here, what we are going to say is we're going to say the height of each of these, instead of it being 80, let's try 60. And what I'm also going to do is we are going to command click into this cell. And let me just go take a look at its layout code. And I just want to make sure that we're not assuming the height will be 80. So the heights of the labels should be content view divided by 2 for the height, which in fact we are doing. So that's looking great. So let's go ahead and run it and let's see if the heights are a little more compact. Okay, definitely much more compact. The padding looks a little too much to me as well. So I'm gonna go back here and we're gonna bring in the content inset a little bit. We're using 2 for the top. Let's use 1 for the top and bottom, and we can leave the trailing and leading as 2. So let's go ahead and do that. And let's see. Okay, this is looking much better now, I think. Let's go ahead and add the header view. So unlike a table view, you actually need to go ahead and register a reusable view for your actual header in the collection view, but we also need to specify a layout parameter for it. So I believe it's on the section. We're going to say section dot, I believe, let's see, we have supplementary items, boundary supplementary items. So we're going to go ahead and create a single item in here. This is going to be a NS collection, something like layout supplementary item. Let's see, I think what we want is we have a boundary supplementary item and just a supplementary item. I'm going to guess, and I think it is the boundary one. Let's go ahead and create it. And let's see which constructor we want. So we want the one that has an element kind and an alignment. So let's go ahead and do this. And I'm going to line break first and foremost. And let's see. So alignment is pretty simple. It's going to be at the top of the section. And the kind is going to be a header. So we're going to say UI collection view, element kind header. Let's see, let's not have a typo, that might help. Element kind header. And this one is going to be the size of the header. So basically similar to what we did up above for the item and the group, we're going to say NS collection layout size, which will be, yep, this first one here. And what are we going to use for this? So let's go ahead and let's say the header is basically a square. So it's going to be the entirety of the width of the container, and the height will also be the entirety of the width. But before we can go ahead and see the header, we also need to register a actual view for that header. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to create that in our views here. Let's open up views. And let's see, this is for playlists. I'll just create it at the root here. We're going to create a new file. I'm going to go ahead and say it's a Swift file. Actually, rather, let's go back and let's do a Cocoa Touch class. It'll probably save us some time. And what we want this to be is a UI collection reusable view. And this is going to be our playlist header collection reusable view. Go ahead and create that. And let's see what we want to do in here. So just like a cell, we're going to need to register this. So let's go ahead and create a static identifier property on here. We want to go ahead and override the initializer that takes a frame, just like that. Now there's no content view on here if memory serves. So what we will say is we will say background color is red. And we also need the required other initializer. And let's see, let's go ahead and spell that correctly. We're also going to want layout subviews on here. Once we get to adding the subviews, we're going to be downloading and showing the image for the playlist image. So I'm going to import SD web image. And let's also go ahead and make this class final, meaning nobody can subclass it. Let's jump back to our playlist view controller. And just like we registered the actual cell here, we're going to say collection view. And we want to register a class. That's not what we want. We want to say register. We want to register a view class for a supplementary view. So here is the class name .self. The kind, once again, will be UI collection view element kind header. So we want this one here. And the identifier will be the class name .identifier, same as before with the cell right above. And of course, we need to dequeue this when we want that particular header. So we're going to say view for, I believe it's supplementary view, just like that. And what we're going to guard in here, because we don't want to return anything for the footer. So I am going to say guard that kind is UI collection view dot element kind header. And if it's not that kind, what we will do is we will return a UI collection view reusable cell. So basically it'll return that for the footer. In other words, we won't actually return a footer. So here we will just copy and paste it because autocomplete sucks, but we'll just return that. And then if we are a header kind, what we're going to say down here is we'll say let header, rather we'll say guard let header is going to be a collection view, and we are going to dequeue a reusable supplementary view. And let's see which one we want. We want this one here of kind with identifier for index path. Let's go ahead and line break all this jazz. Whoops, and hit Control I to align. And we also want to cast it as the type that we expect. And actually, what we can probably do is let's go ahead and move all this stuff into the same guard statement for the sake of simplicity. We'll go ahead and do that, and I'll go ahead and line break that. We don't need these curlies anymore since we have them down below. We added a comma there, so looking good. And once we have this header, we can simply return it. We're going to eventually add a function on the header in just a moment that's something along the lines of configure with, I don't know, header view model. We won't do that at the moment, but go ahead and hit Command B, make sure everything is compiling. Let's hit Command R to run. Let's make sure that we see our red header up here, which in fact we do. So now what we want in here is basically just the name of the playlist, description, the image, and a play button. So let's go ahead and create that view model. So let me first actually make sure that we have all that data. So we'll say, let's just check like saying playlist dot, it has a name, which is good. It should have a description as well, which is good. And let's see what else it has on here. I don't actually remember. So it has images, it has an owner. So we probably want to show the owner as well, which is a user. So let's go ahead and create all of our views, subviews in this header. So let's see what we're going to want in here based on the data that the actual model provides. So we are going to want a name label, which will be a UI label. Let's go ahead and create it with an anonymous closure. All right, there's that label. label. Let me just go ahead and give this a nice font size. So it's a little larger. So we're going to say system font size 22. We'll say a weight of semi-bold perhaps. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this 2 more times for the description label and owner label. So we'll say description label. This one will be in owner label. And let's go ahead and change the font. So for the description, we'll say this is perhaps 18 with regular, and this one will also be 18 with, let's say, light. And let's see, what else do we want? So first of all, let me add a mark here just to organize our code. We're also going to want a image view. So the image view will, let's just call it image view. We'll say this is UI image view. I should probably call it playlist image view, but whatever, I'm gonna be lazy right now. So we're gonna say image view is a image view. We're gonna go ahead and return it. We'll say image view. We're gonna assign its content mode to be aspect fill, so it looks nice and full. And I'm also gonna give it a default image while the one that we're downloading is loading. And it's gonna be, let's go ahead and just give it photo. And I think that's all that we will need. So let's go ahead and add this jazz as a sub view. So we're gonna first say image view, copy and paste that 3 times. We're gonna have name label, description label, and owner label, just like that. And we are going to want a configure on here. So we're gonna say func configure with view model. And we need to create a type for this view model. So I'm just going to put a string there for a quick second. And let's open up the view models folder and create a new file here. It's going to be a Swift file. And let's go ahead and call this. What I'm going to actually do is we can copy the name here. And let's go ahead and try that one more time. Let's create a new file in view models, new file, Swift file. Let's go ahead and paste it. And we can just say this is player header view model. Let's go ahead and call it player header view model, which is a little redundant, but whatever. Go ahead and give it a create. Let's go ahead and just put it in here. It'll be a basic struct. It'll have a playlist name, which will be a string. It'll have an owner name, which will be a string as well. It's going to have a playlist description, just like that. And actually, we could probably just drop the playlist prefixes since we're already in a playlist header view model. And what else did I say is going to go in here? We also want a artwork URL, which will be URL optional, just like that. And let's see, we could also make these all optional in general too, so we don't have to coalesce them. And that'll actually work pretty nicely. So let's go ahead and go back to our view. Pro tip, just a reminder, you can swipe if you have a trackpad between files. Go ahead and paste in that new type there. Our name labels text is going to be our view models.name. I'm going to copy and paste that 3 times and change this to owner label. This one is going to be, what's the other label? Description label. And this will be dot owner. This will be dot description. And finally, just like we did for all the other cells, for the image view, we're going to say SD set image, and we want to pass in view model dot artwork URL. Completion is nil. And before we do all the layout, which is my least favorite part here, let's just go ahead and call this function back in the view controller. So we're going to say player view controller, or rather playlist view controller. I keep doing that. Let's go ahead and create that view model. So we'll say let header view model is going to be our player header, rather playlist header header view model. Let's go ahead and give it a create here with the parentheses, and I'll bring everything in just a moment. Let me just go ahead and change this to be, we can just leave it as header view model, I guess. And the name here, let's just line break all of this and hit Control I to align. The name here will be the current playlist dot name. The owner name will be playlist dot owner dot display name. The description will be playlist dot description. This one will be playlist, rather this is a URL. So we want to create a URL constructor here with a string, and we're going to coalesce this to be optional. And we are going to say this is playlist dot images, not ID, we want images first. .url, just like that. And now that we have this header view model here, you can pass this to the view to be configured. So we're going to say configure with view model, header view model. So that's all looking great. Let's go ahead and just run it. And let's see if everything kind of still compiles. We still need to lay it out, but you'll see your header view is still showing up. We should see the content somewhere in here, but apparently not. So let's see. So let's go back to our view that we created. Let's go ahead and close up these folders since we don't really need them anymore. And what I am going to do in this layout subviews, first and foremost, if we think about this by just looking at it, the biggest thing that we want is the actual image view. So let's go ahead and calculate out the size for that image. So I want to say the image size is going to be a CG float. And what we're going to do is we are going to take the current height and divide it by 1.5. And that's going to be the height of the image. Let me just go ahead and assign it here, just so we can see it in action on the simulator. So X and Y, ignore for a moment. The Y, let's go ahead and let's just have this be perhaps 20, but the X we want to be centered. So I'm going to say with subtracting image size divided by 2. Go ahead and give that a run, and let's make sure our image is showing up. So beautiful, there is our image. Let me go ahead and get rid of this obnoxious red background. There it is, we set it right here. Let's go ahead and set it to the system background. Now in Spotify, the actual color of the album kind of bleeds into the background. I wanna do that later on, maybe not just quite yet, but we will be doing that at some point because it's a pretty cool feature. So there is our image view. We want to put the label for the name of this playlist right here, followed by maybe one line description, followed by maybe one line of the person who created it. So the image looks a little too big at the moment. So let's go ahead and say maybe divided by 1.8. And let's go ahead and do the other one. So I am going to next say the name label dot frame will be CG rect. 10 from the left, the Y will be the image view dot bottom. The width will be the width subtracting 20, and the height is going to be 44. And let's do the description and owner label respectively. We're going to say description label and owner label. And the only thing changing is the Y. In this case, it'll be the name label dot bottom. And this one is going to be the description label dot bottom. Now we're just hard coding the heights here. You could change it if you wanted to, but just for the sake of sanity, I'm going to do that. It does actually go ahead and truncate here, but that's okay. So you can see this. This one's from Spotify. Let's go ahead and let's see if we can get a decent amount of line wrapping here because it will probably look a lot nicer. So let's say number of lines on here is going to be 0. I'm also going to go ahead and change the text color for the description to be secondary text. And I'm also going to do that for our secondary label. I'm also going to do that for the owner's label. I think that'll look a little nicer. Go ahead and give it a run. Let's go ahead and tap on one of these. Okay, that's starting to look a whole lot better. So there is our sizing. And now we just want to add a little green play button here too. So the reason I left the play button for the very end is because we'll also need to have a protocol in this view to communicate the tap back to the controller. So if you're familiar with it, you know it's pretty simple, but if you're not, I wanted to spend a couple minutes talking about it. So let's go ahead and add that button in here first and foremost. So we're going to want a private let play all button, and this is going to be a UI button, right? Pretty simple. And we're going to go ahead and create a button in here, which is a UI button. We're going to return this guy. We're also going to give it a nice background color of perhaps system green. We are also going to give it a image. We're going to say set image, a UI image, system name. Whoops, let's open up a parenthesis there, not an asterisk. System name, and I think there's one that's like play.fill or something. It's like a play button basically. Let's go ahead and say normal, and we want the button's tint color to be white. And we're also going to give this a fixed height. So I'm going to say this is CG rect. Actually, we don't actually want to do it here. Let me just, what we'll do here, I guess, is let's give it a fixed corner radius because we're going to make this be a circle. Let's say the button is 70 by 70. So the corner radius will be 35. And that way we'll make sure we get a nice rounded circle. We're going to say masks to bounds is true. And we also want to come in here and add it as a sub view. And let's see. We want to also give it an action. So let's go ahead and say add target self. We're going to say this is a selector here for did tap play all. And this is going to be for touch up inside, pretty simple. And let's go ahead and create that private selector right there. Now, don't actually implement this here. We're going to talk about using a protocol to kind of proxy this and notify our view controller that it was tapped. But let's go ahead and do the layout for this. So the layout is going to be image view dot rather play all button is what I meant. Dot frame is CG rect. Let's just make these 0, 0 for a quick moment. 70, 70. Now, what is the Y going to be? This is going to be height subtracting 100. And X will be the width subtracting 100. So go ahead and give it a run. And let's make sure we have that play button showing up first and foremost. And then we'll hook up the protocol. So there's our play button. Wow, it's obnoxiously large. We don't want it to be that big. So maybe 70 was a bit of an overshot. So let's do 50. Let's do 50 there. Let's go ahead and change the corner radius on this to be half of 50, which is 25. And we're also going to go ahead and for this image, you can actually control the size of it. So I'm going to go ahead and create an image right above this. You can control the size of these built-in SF symbols by providing a configuration, which is, I believe, something like a system configuration, UI image configuration, symbol configuration. And we can go ahead and create this with a font, a scale. I'm going to use point size and weight personally. Let's try 44 and regular, and let's see what that looks like. Go ahead and give it a run. Hopefully I'm not going through this too quickly. And okay, it definitely looks better. The button's way too big in the circle itself. So let's make that smaller. Let's try 30. We also want to move it down a little bit because it's far too high now. Let's go ahead and do that. I think the button's too small now. I'm going to be annoying and change the size one more time. So let's see what we did down here. We made it 50 by 50. We probably want 60 by 60. Let's do that. Let's change this to be minus 80 instead of 100 from the height as well as the width. And let's go ahead and change the corner radius to be 30. Go ahead and give it a run. And everybody cross your fingers. Let's see what we get. Okay, much better. Now, when we tap on this, what we want to actually do is play all of the tracks in here in order. But we want the controller to do that. So how do we actually notify from this function, did tap play all, back to the controller? That's where a delegate comes in. And you might, if you're not familiar, you use delegates and whatnot for collection views and data sources, but we're going to create our own delegate here to notify the controller, like this button was tapped. So I'm going to create a protocol up here, which will be the name of our class, suffixed by delegate. It's going to be any object, so we can hold a weak reference to it. We're going to have a function in here, which is going to be the name of the class, did tap play all. And this takes a parameter, or we're going to have it take a parameter of the view that is actually making this delegate call. Now that we have this protocol defined here, we're going to create a weak reference property on our actual class here, which will be the protocol type optional. Now what we can do in our actual selector here, we can say delegate and actually call upon this function passing in self. And finally, the most important piece to actually receive this call back in our controller, what we can go ahead and do is first close our view folder and this core folder, jump back to our playlist view controller, and we can say that the headers delegate to receive the events is self. And don't forget, now that we've said that we will conform, we need to actually conform to that protocol. I'm going to do it once again down here in a extension just to keep everything nice and organized. And this is where we would start playlist play all in queue. So go ahead and do that. And actually, just for the sake of testing, let's just go ahead and print out playing all. So go ahead and do that, give it a run, and we should see that print statement. So I'm gonna drag up my console to get a little more visibility. Let's go ahead and open this, and I'm gonna tap on this, and boom, there is our print statement. So we have cleanly separated out our view and controller responsibilities there. So here is a playlist. You could add, let's just do it right now really fast. We want to add a little share button at the top right. So if you found a really cool playlist you want to share with a friend of yours, what you can do is you can tap that button to share. I'm definitely winging this at this point. So let's go ahead to the bottom of view to load, and we're going to say navigation item. Right bar button item is going to be a UI bar button item. And let's see, we want a bar button item for an action. Target will be self. The selector for the action will be did tap share. Let's go ahead and create this here. So we are going to say create this, and basically to show one of those share sheet style things where you can send share something to like a text message or whatever. You can create a controller here. So we'll say VC is UI activity view controller, and you create this with activity items and application activities. So what we want to create is an activity item, but for application activities, we'll keep it as an empty array. I'm going to fill in that first array in a moment, but we're going to say VC dot, let's see, VC, we want to present this now basically. So we're going to say present VC animated true, but we also want to say VC dot popover controller, presentation controller, and we should be able to assign a bar button. This is for iPad, so your app doesn't crash on iPad, but we want basically this popover to be connected to the right bar button item, just like that. Let's actually fill in what goes in here. We want to share a URL to the actual playlist. If you recall, we've been saving these external URL dictionaries from the model. So let's go ahead and just print it out. I believe there is a property in there, or a key in there. If we go ahead and tap on this, that'll actually give us the URL. So in fact, there is, it's called Spotify. So what we are going to do out of this is we're going to grab that URL string. So we'll say guard let URL string. And this is going to be, or we can just say URL rather. Let's just create the URL here, which is going to be our external URLs for the key Spotify as a string. Otherwise, we're going to coalesce to an empty string. And once we actually have that string out here, what we can go ahead and do, we've created a URL from it. We can actually pass it in here, just like that. And we could add optionally a string, something along the lines of, check out this cool playlist I found. Go ahead and give it a run. And let's see, why is this yelling at me with this warning here? Let's see, we're saying as a string. Is that redundant? I believe it is. Yes, it is. We don't need this. All right. Let's go ahead and tap on this. I'm going to tap on share because this is an awesome playlist. There's our share sheet. And you can see we have the actual text showing up here. But if I hit text message, sometimes it shows up in a simulator and sometimes it doesn't. It's slightly annoying. Let's try that one more time. Sometimes the simulator hangs when you tap on it. Yeah, it looks like it's hanging in this particular case, or it's not showing up for whatever reason. But let's go ahead and let me hit copy. I'm not sure if that copies to the clipboard, but we'll find out. So we're going to go ahead and paste, and it looks like it copied that. So let's get rid of that string and just pass in the URL. If you run this on device, you'll see that when you share it to like a text message, it'll actually render out the rich preview. You can actually see right here, rendered it out. So rock classics, you have the Spotify logo, and that's the URL that you'd be sharing. So pretty cool. We put together our playlist. That's basically the end of this video. Of course, we're not playing the songs yet. We might want to add a footer later on to the bottom of this of some other information, but I think this is good enough for now. In the next video, we're going to add the headers for each of these sections, even though I mentioned it in this video since it's gotten kind of long. And I'm also going to go ahead and set up the album here. Then we're going to move along to search, the UI here for categories, actually searching, and then we're going to move on to creating playlists and albums. And the final thing will be actually playing songs with a really cool player view. So I think the app is coming along pretty great. If you haven't liked the video already, please make sure to do so. Leave a comment down below, even if you don't have a question. Helps out with the YouTube algorithm, engagement, and whatnot. So thanks again for watching. Super appreciate you and the time. I'll see you guys in the next one.